Hi, I'm Robert Cavuoto, and today on Sonic Perspectives, we're speaking with hard rocking blues guitarist and vocalist Jared James Nichols for the release of his self entitled album coming out January 13th in 2023. Congratulations, the album kicks ass. It's going to be out right around the corner, man, right?
Thanks, man. I'm super excited. Yeah, I mean, it feels weird to think that it's going to be out so soon. I'm
Yeah,
pumped.
I know. When I was looking at the dates, I was like, oh, January's so far away, but really we're almost in December, and yeah, then you throw Christmas in there and it's gone.
I know, like, I remember, like, when we were recording this record, I'm thinking to myself, when will people hear it? And now that we're finally getting to that time, I
Mhm.
couldn't be more excited.
That's great. Let me just pull up my questions here.
Yeah, do
So
it up.
yeah, so before we get into talking about the album, I actually wanted to talk to you a little bit about when I saw you in concert with John Five,
Oh, nice.
and that was August 2021
Yep,
at the
yep,
Sherman Theater.
yep.
And from the stage, you mentioned that you had a guitar, Les Paul, that went through a hurricane or a tornado. I can't remember which one. Could you tell me a little
Or,
bit about that story?
yeah, I'm looking at the guitar right now as we speak. Um, that was okay. So that would have been the day after I got that guitar. It was
Really?
there. Yes. So we played, I'm trying to remember. I think it was the Sellersville Theater. I think that
Yes,
was
that was it.
right.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Sherman Theater. Sherman
We were
Theater.
the Sherman. I think we were at the Sellersville the night before, I think.
Okay.
But long story short, this guy hits me up on Instagram, on my social media, and he sends me a picture and he goes, "Hey man, I know you like older Les Pauls. Check out this guitar I found in the midst of a tornado in my hometown." So I click the picture, and lo and behold, I see what is 1952. It's like a guitar thing. 1952
Yeah.
Les Paul with the neck snapped off of it. So I hit the guy up and I say, "Hey man, this is crazy. Tell me the story." And he said that a tornado, it was like a E4 tornado, like a horrible tornado, ravaged his town in 2013 in
Mhm.
near Chicago, and this guitar ended up in his front yard,
Wow.
all battered, and the owner was like 4 blocks away. It was her father's. She claimed it on her insurance, and she said to him, "Just hang it on your wall." So the guitar, I see it as it is. It still has all the pickups, everything. The neck had just been broken off.
Right.
And he said, "I'm thinking about getting it restored." And I was like, "Hey, man, if you don't do that, please let me know. I would love to get this guitar, revive it, and bring it back on stage." Gave him my number. The next day, he calls me. He said, "You can have it."
Wow.
So I traded him. I said, "I can't just have it. I need to give you something." He goes, "No, I didn't buy it. I'm not selling it." Long story short, sent it to a friend in Pennsylvania who's an incredible master luthier.
Yeah.
And he ended up going and reconstructing the neck, putting it all back together. Insane. So when I saw you, that was right after the guitar had been restored. And talk about just an absolute monster of a guitar. It's one of my favorite on the planet now.
Wow. That's a great story. I remember you flipped it over and I think it was all scratched up on the back, right? It was like it
Yeah,
looked like a piece of shit.
it was like road rash,
Right.
legit, like from whatever had happened to it. There was some buckle rash, but the vast majority were chunks that were taken out of it from, flying. And the thing, it's so crazy to me to think that, this thing survived for 60 years, went through a tornado, broke its neck. Now it lives to play on, and now I get to beat it up all the time. And it's just a fantastic guitar. So I'm so lucky to have it, man.
That's great. Was the neck you said the neck was snapped. Was the headstock missing?
Yes, headstock was missing.
That's
The neck was snapped off near where it meets the body,
okay.
but it looked like literally someone would have taken it and just, and it was like a really nasty snap. So what my friend Joel did is when he restored it, he was able to he took the old piece of the neck off, grafted it onto a new neck,
Wow,
put it
he's
right
good.
back on. This guy's like forensic files with guitar,
Yeah,
man. It's
that's incredible.
crazy.
Well, that's a great story, and thank you for sharing it with me because
Of
I found it
course.
fascinating when I was watching you on stage too. So that was
Yeah, man. So awesome.
it was great. Being a guitar lover, it was really cool to hear that.
Hmm.
Now about the new album, it's self-titled. I love it. There's something familiar about it, yet it's something new and exciting in your music. It's got great songs, great riffs. Tell me about where you like to pull your inspiration from lyrically.
So lyrically, I try and pull inspiration from things that either have actually happened to me or if it's just a total tall tale. So with this record, I was able to dig deeper on the songwriting, go deeper on the lyrics because I felt like with this one, I had time. I had time to really think about where I wanted to go with it. I wrote this record in the midst of lockdown, so there was a
Right.
lot of, I thought to myself, man, I want to make a record that feels like me. And lyrically, a lot of things were coming from a place of confusion, which is
Mhm.
so funny because, like I was saying, like in the midst of like the real world, like I was writing these songs, like whether it was like Skin and Bone or like just all this stuff was coming out that I just let it flow. And I think that was one of the cool parts about this record is the fact that as I was writing it, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to make a blues rock record or I'm going to make a heavy rock record.
Right.
I just let the songs and kind of the energy go where it wanted to go and didn't think too hard about what it was going to find as a finished product. But as it started to grow itself, it came out to be what it is, which is kind of cool.
No, I think it's great. Being a self-titled album, I have to wonder if you feel this is your most ambitious album yet.
Yes. So there was a heavy reason for putting it self-titled. This is the first time that I had been in a studio and I actually felt like I was really getting out like what was in my heart and in my head onto the actual tape. So when we made this record, I had a lot of things that I wanted to almost prove to myself, but ultimately bring out as an artist, whether it was people would come up to me at shows and they say, "Hey, Jared, amazing show. You sound so much better live than you do on record." And I would always go, "Thanks, man." So when they would say that, I totally understand it was a compliment, but I said to myself, with this record, I wanted to serve as a menu for the live show. I want it to be exciting. I want it to be kind of crazy, a little rough around the edges. So we went in the studio and we recorded everything live to tape, and then I sang over it.
Wow.
So it was a really old school approach. We didn't use a computer, nothing. And when this record finally presented itself at the end, I was getting asked, well, what are you going to call it? What are you going to say? And I was like, you know what? This is my self-titled record because I feel like everything is built up to this point. And I know artists say that all the time,
Mhm.
but everything is built up to this point. And I feel like now I have a strong kind of feel of who I am and where I want to go as an artist. And I think that this record kind of represents that.
Yeah. The story reminds me of Kiss's album, Alive. How
Yeah.
how alive they sounded better live than they did on their first three studio albums, and it was related to producing, not the band itself, and they were really never happy with that. So that sounds kind of like your situation.
Yeah, it's awesome because I finally got to a point where I was comfortable enough with myself in the
Yeah.
studio to say, no, I want to actually do this. I don't want to do this." And I think it was a lack of, I didn't know what I really wanted in the studio on those last records. Of course, we made a lot of great music that I love, and when I listen to it, I love it. But this is the first time I was in a studio and I was just comfortable. It felt
Yeah,
like I was just like doing me, which is
that's
great.
great. What role does the amp and the guitars play in your creative process when you're writing these songs?
A lot. I mean, I draw as a guitar player. That's my main conduit basically to get the music out. I worked with producer Eddie Kramer, who worked with Kiss and all these
Yeah.
different, and he would always say to me, "Jared, you play the guitar. It's all about the riffs. It's all about the riff. Give me a good riff." And he would sit there and he'd go, "Give me a riff. You got four notes. Give me a riff." I'd sit there, I go, ba-ba-dum-bum-bum, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so for me, a lot of my inspiration draws from the guitar. I'll literally sit here, I'm looking at a guitar right behind the screen, and I'm visualizing what I would play on it or what that might sound like or where that could take me. I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it plays a big role in a way of now it's great because it's a support to the vocal, it's a support to the song. But I feel like with a guitar, it's like my ultimate paint. Like I've practiced and I've studied that thing so much that as a songwriter and as an artist now, I know exactly what color I want. I go to my guitar to get it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's a huge piece of who I am.
No, that's fantastic. What I loved about the album was also that you had a lot of varied guitar tones on it, from
Mhm.
Easy Come, Easy Go to Bad Roots, which almost had that Sabbath vibe in the beginning,
Oh, yeah.
with that real deep, crunchy guitar. Are there any
Yeah.
songs that on this album that really embody your guitar tone?
Great question, man. There is moments on the album that I feel like really embody certain shades of my guitar tones and
Mhm.
also like just like kind of getting in my brain, like you said, with Easy Come, Easy Go. So with all of the solos and all of like really the tones on the record, it was almost as if I was doing them like while we were recording. And it was like when it came to the solo section, Easy Come, Easy Go, I remember that being so like unnatural to the point where, there's this crazy feedback and all this stuff. And it was like, it was in the moment.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this record embodies at the heart of what I love, which is like an improvisation. And it is kind of like just seeing where it goes. I think a lot of, this record tells a lot of my influences, whether it was the Sabbath vibes, whether it was, of course, we have all of these, my different sources of inspiration. But the reality is, oh man, that's a really good question. I don't know if there's one that I'm just going to go with Easy Come, Easy Go, because that one felt like to me, I remember we recorded that once, and what you got on the album is what you get.
That's awesome. Did you work out the guitar tones in advance of going into the studio, or did you do those in the studio playing with different combinations of amps and guitars at the, in the living room, so to speak?
No, to be honest, everything was done in advance, but it was done in a way that when I walked into the studio, I thought more, instead of going like, oh, I'm going into the studio, let me get a bunch of gear and mess with it and see what it sounds like. I really wanted to go and try and capture the essence of the live thing, just recorded really well. So what I ultimately ended up doing was I brought in my live rig, but the one thing that I did is, instead of using, like when we're touring, we use like kind of mid-powered amps, because guitar player, right? We turn it up and they go, hey, you got to turn that down, you need to get the sound. So with this record, it was the one time I could use the really, really high powered amps. So I had 200 watts, and it was like, it wasn't, remember Back to the Future when this was like my version of that. So when we recorded, it was the coolest thing, because I felt like it was the best version of my live town, but like it was just my guitar, like on that record, you're hearing one guitar and it just sounds huge. And in the room, Eddie, our producer, he said, this is the loudest thing I've ever had to record. So there's kind of an art to that too. Like when you hear this record and you hear like, if there's a guitar part happening and you can hear like the snare behind it or things buzzing, it's because it was that loud in the room. So it's kind of cool.
I was a little disappointed. I only got to hear it on my little computer speaker. So I cannot wait to get the CD and crank it on my, my cabinet. So
do you do vinyl? Do you listen to vinyl or no?
I don't have, my daughter has a recorder, but it's not set up. I go to like, I have a Marshall Bluetooth.
Oh, those are great. Yeah, those are great.
Perfect sound, crystal clear. And that's from the iPhone to that would be awesome. So I can't wait to get it and actually crank it out and really.
Oh yeah, man. I can't wait for you to do that. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Going back to what Eddie Kramer told you, tell me about the importance of writing heavy riff driven songs, because, and I grew up playing guitar to those Judas Priest, all riff driven. So tell me a little bit about the importance to you and now.
To me, it's super important. I think that the foundation, like yourself, Rob, like it's what we grew up on.
Yeah.
And there's not only is there a certain nostalgic factor to it, but it's the essence, it's the foundation of kind of rock and roll in general. So the importance for me with writing like that is to try and take the essence of it, but do it in my own way, and try and write in a way that feels really personal to me. Although it could be like, yeah, man, Jared, these 5 notes have been played a billion times, but how can I put my spin on it? How can I inject my personality into it? And ultimately it's cool now, because when I think about writing riffs and those single note line riffs, I ultimately think about, what is my vocal going to do? What's the sound going to do? And it's just crazy to me, like as a music lover, the fact that here we are after decades and decades of incredible music has been recorded and written, that we're still able to pull from this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And create things that feel inspired and they feel fresh. So that's really what it's about for me, is taking what I love about it and injecting my own kind of fresh air into it.
That's fantastic. And there's something to say about just a simple, good riff that anybody could learn, hum, sing, play to. And that's what I think it makes songs most memorable. The ones that are overcomplicated, they get diluted and you lose that. Yes. And I think there's something to say about artists like yourself that just go out there and crank it, and it's just so memorable and so awesome.
It's so hard because as a guitarist and as a musician, in your brain, you're always like more, more, more. And you think, and a lot of players can paint themselves into a corner because they get so good or they play so technical that it's like, to you and I, we go, oh, this is amazing. But in order for me, I never, I love all of that aspect of music, but I never wanted to shy away from the things that I truly love, the things that made the hair stand on the back of my neck from when I was a kid, which is really, really great riff-oriented rock music with some soul in it.
Awesome, awesome. One of my other favorite songs was Skin and Bones.
Oh yeah.
I think that should be on every guitar player's playlist, every rocker's playlist. What's the story behind that one? It sounds kind of interesting.
One of the first songs I wrote for the record. That was literally written about, I would say it was the height of lockdown and it was during the time of all of like the protests were happening and I was at home and I was like kind of had like everyone, it was almost like you had the news on like what's going to happen next, right? And I remember sitting there with my guitar because that was the only thing that I had that felt normal to me at the time. It's like, okay, as long as I can play, I can do this, it's okay. But long story short, I got together with a friend of mine, Marty Fredrickson, who's
Yeah,
a awesome killer guy,
yeah,
and one of his songwriting partners, Zach Malloy. Um, anyways, we sat down and I started playing that guitar line, and it was almost like the verse thing. And I was sitting on a 12-string acoustic of all things, and we were all sitting there. And before we started to write, we were talking about like, man, what's going on? It was almost like we were just talking like three guys just chopping it up, like no egos, just like what's happening.
yeah.
So we wrote Skin and Bone with that kind of in mind. And in truly the ultimate message of that song, of course, it's kind of heavy. It's got a really rock swagger. But the reality, like that chorus, all in all, we all can change because inside we're all the same. And it's almost like you got to give a little to get a little.
Yeah.
It was more of a song about like, can we just unify? Can we get it together for everyone? And that was the underlying message in that song. And I thought it came out really cool. And yet again, though, that was another thing when being in the studio, I was just so inspired to kind of get those weird sounds on the intro with the guitar line. And I think it came out really, really powerful.
I think so too. And that song even goes past COVID. It could go to right now to the political climate. Why can't
Yes.
we all get along? Why can't we figure this out? Why we're all Americans?
Yes.
Let's make this work. So I think it's a great rally cry.
I think it is, and I feel like even like as time goes by, I think it's going to apply to everything that we have, man.
Do you typically write on acoustic? I'm kind of surprised to hear that, particularly that song.
Great question. No, here's the funny part, man. You know, it's when I started to write when I got home, the biggest thing that was happening was I couldn't crank it up, and at this time I was living in an apartment,
Oh,
and I could not. So I had an acoustic, and I'd sit there and I'd write and I'd sing on it. But you know what happens when you do that? You write in a certain specific way,
mhm.
right? So it's almost like if you're driving a car and it's like, okay, if we're driving a Prius, we're going to drive it in a certain way. And if we have a Chevelle, it's like, no, we're going this way. So when I play my electrics, it's like, no, I tend to go for a certain grind.
Yeah.
So with all these songs, a lot of them were written on acoustics. But what ended up happening was when they made it past the drawing board, and it was like, okay, I think I actually want this. This feels strong. I would pull out my electric and I go, how am I going to take this, strip it all the way down and build it back up? Thinking in my head of, I always think about myself and my band, like on stage, like three people playing these songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how can I strip this back, but ultimately enhance it to make it like just a badass, kick-ass rock, you know? I mean, think about it, man. All those classic bands, most of them were trios with a singer. So it's like,
Mhm.
how do I take from that influence and make these songs work like that? So it is kind of weird because some songs like Saint or Fool, that song was a ballad. It was like totally just like a strummy acoustic thing.
Yeah.
And then it turned into this like Sabbath demonic riff. But ultimately, I think it was pretty cool.
Yeah. That's interesting because like you could almost put out a whole nother album of the acoustic versions that or the demos or things like that. It'd be kind of fascinating to hear how it evolved.
Some of them you would be like, this is that song. The only thing that feels similar is the lyric. And
Yeah.
it is a pretty awesome journey to watch a song start with its inception and then go somewhere where you didn't even think it could go, which
Right.
is, I think that's pretty cool.
It's a great story. When you're deep in a solo, like on Hardwired, for
Mhm.
example, you're going for the psychedelic bridge to the wailing solo. What's going through your head?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, truly, what goes through my head is when I get like, so like all that stuff was just recorded live, right? So
Wow.
yeah. So like even with Hardwired, like that intro where it's really psychedelic and it's woo 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 woo. That was something that I did that no one was even thinking I was going to do. I started to do it and I was messing with my pedals and I went woo 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 woo, and then got up and started to do that solo and then we went into the song. And when I think about it right now, I don't know what was truly going through my head. It was just like kind of trying to be inspired in the moment. And with that bridge section, I specifically remember looking at Clark on bass and I looked at him and it wasn't like a fear in my eyes, but I was like, where are we going? What are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, and all of a
I'm
sudden he comes
lost.
up here and he starts playing up here and then I'm down here. And then he goes down here and I go up here. And it was just like this really cool thing. I think what it comes down to is when I'm playing guitar and when I'm in the moment, I'm trying to speak to the other members, like, like the interplay between the band. But then also, I'm almost trying to channel something that's like outside of the realm of where I want to go. So,
Right.
like, even that solo, I can't specifically remember cutting them. I just remember the energy I had at the point.
Yeah. In a zone, right?
I was in the zone,
Yeah.
man.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Are you the type of person that improvises while the recording's going on, or are you writing everything down structurally, what you're going to be doing in the studio?
Fully improvised. The only thing is I won't write it down, but I'll have in my head like some roadmaps where it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I know I'm going to start here, especially when it comes to like, parts, I'm pretty well structured when I'm singing, because the one thing I always think about is when I'm playing guitar, I'm playing guitar. When I'm singing, I'm singing. So, when I'm backing up my vocal, I'll basically have like a general guide map.
Mhm.
But when it comes to improv, sometimes, man, I just fly off the rails and it's just like I play something and it's like a domino effect. It can go either way though. It
Sure.
could sometimes you could crash and burn really easy and hit something and go, oh no, 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 no. And but there was other things like a lot of the solos, let me think. Oh, I would say 9 out of the 12 solos on that record were improv right there on the spot. And it's cool because then I would listen back to those solos and then I kind of learn them, So when I'm live, I'd be like, okay, what did I do on this one? Oh, yeah,
What the hell did I do here? I got to figure this out
Totally.
now.
Yeah, man. It's funny.
There's so many great blues artists that are coming out now, and I think the blues has a little bit of resurgence, particularly in the
Mhm.
hard rock, genre. What do you find most fascinating about playing the blues these days?
I think it's an open book. I think that there's been a lot of the generations gone by, it was a really rigid thing and it was like there was all these rules and it was like even like I remember when I was a kid, people used to say like the blues police. It was like, oh, if the blues police come after you because if someone's playing too rock and roll or too bluesy or they're doing something that they didn't like. I feel like now with music, it's like it's gone so far into the electronics that anything that touches with a guitar and has some soul and inspiration behind it, it means something and it indirectly comes from a bluesy source, right? So I feel like the walls are kind of broken down that it's like whether you're playing rock and roll, even man, like you'll hear cool bluesy stuff in like anything from like hip hop stuff, like you'll hear the elements of it everywhere. But I think what's cool about it now is the fact that it's there's been so much that has been played, but now it's like starting fresh. I can inject my own personality, whether I'm playing over a blues, over a rock track, whatever it is. And I feel like it's just like, first off, it's timeless, but also it's really open now. And it's really, how could I say it? It's just fun. Like even playing over songs on this record that you wouldn't think I was thinking blues. It was like I
Mhm.
can inject that into everything and it feels great.
Where do you think it's going to go? You're saying that it's going to go into, it's in rap, it's in hard rock, it's in blues.
Yeah.
Where do you see this going? It's almost endless, I guess, to your point, right?
I think, yeah, I think it's almost endless. I think that it's such a red thread that goes throughout everything. And that's the cool part about playing it for me is the fact that like I honestly I truly think it's never ending. Now, do I think the blues structure of, let's say a 12 bar blues or certain traditional things, I think that'll always be what it is, and that'll be a timeless statement in music. But I think as far as like the essence and the soul of the blues, it's time it'll never end.
That's great. That's great. Not only did I see you play with John Five, but I saw you play with Saxon.
Oh wow, where was that at? Penn's Peak?
No, no. Oh shit, I should have wrote it down. It was in New Jersey.
It's in
Uh,
Jersey.
it was in,
Was it at that theater in Newton?
yes, Newton Theater. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
And I saw you and your band eating pizza. I got there early, and you guys were in
Yeah, man, we were at the spot next door.
yeah, it's right next door. And I saw you play there, and I fell in love with you playing. It's fantastic. Are you
Thanks,
planning
man.
any more tours?
Yeah, absolutely. We're planning a full 2023 rollout for this record. We did some touring over this past year, and most of our effort, now is going into getting back on the road. With the way that tours, honestly, we had tours booked, they fell through, just due to the nature of everything. But what's great now is having this record ready to come out. We're going to come out strong, and we will be, I mean, we're talking about going everywhere. Not only all over America, which is obviously amazing, but Canada, Europe, UK, Australia, Japan. So this is a record that I want to really, really get behind and promote it as far and as wide as I can.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there when you come to New York.
Yeah, man.
That'd be
Where do you
awesome.
live in Jersey, actually? Where are you at?
Central Jersey. I live in Bridgewater.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I'm about an hour from the Newton Theater. I'm about an hour from Sherman Theater. I'm an hour from New York City. So
That's funny.
And I'm an hour from the beach, which is great too.
That's a good spot to be. That's awesome.
So I want to thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see you on
Cool.
tour, and I can't wait to blast this thing as soon as the release comes out. So thank you. It was a fascinating interview. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you for taking the time today, man. And thanks for reminding me of those memories, man. The Newton Theater. I haven't thought of that one in a while.
It's a good place. Good place.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for everything. I'll talk to you very soon.
Talk to you soon. See you on the road.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
buddy. See ya.